The Truth Behind Karma and Sin, a deep dive into Buddhist philosophy. In many of the world's major religions, sin is a central concept that defines the moral framework of human life. In monotheistic religions such as Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, sin is often described as an offense against a divine law, an action that is not just morally wrong but also spiritually damning. But what if we understood sin differently? What if the concept of sin could be seen from a fresh perspective? One where our actions are not about divine punishment, but about the natural consequences of our behavior. Let's dive into how karma, a core Buddhist teaching, provides an alternative to the monotheistic idea of sin. This exploration will open a window into understanding how our intentions and actions shape our lives, creating either harmony or suffering. Sin in monotheistic religions. The concept of sin, as it is understood in many religious traditions, particularly in monotheistic faiths like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, is centered around the violation of divine laws set by a singular, all-powerful God. The word sin comes from the Old English word sin and the Old Norse word synd, both of which refer to transgressions or acts of disobedience against a higher, divine authority. In the context of Christianity, sin is understood as a moral wrong that goes against the commandments laid out by God. The Bible, particularly the Old Testament, sets forth a series of laws and guidelines that followers are expected to adhere to. The Ten Commandments are perhaps the most famous set of moral principles within Christianity, and their violation is considered a sin. Sin is not only a moral wrongdoing, but also a spiritual barrier, cutting individuals off from God and His grace. When someone commits a sin, they are expected to seek forgiveness from God, usually through repentance, prayer, or acts of atonement. In Christianity, sin is often linked with the idea of eternal punishment. The most well-known consequence of sin is the concept of eternal damnation, or the separation of the sinner from God. This idea is present in many monotheistic faiths, and sin is often depicted as an affront to God's holiness and divine order. The concept of sin in monotheism is fundamentally about guilt, punishment, and divine forgiveness. If a person violates divine laws, they are condemned, and they must seek reconciliation with God to avoid eternal suffering. This cycle of sin and forgiveness is the cornerstone of salvation in many religious traditions, especially Christianity, where Jesus' sacrifice is seen as the ultimate redemption for the sins of humanity. What is sin in Buddhism? Buddhism, however, takes a vastly different approach to understanding human suffering, morality, and ethical conduct. Unlike monotheistic religions that view sin as an offense against a divine being, Buddhism does not have a concept of sin in the traditional sense. In fact, the term sin does not exist in Buddhist teachings. This absence of an all-powerful deity is key to understanding why the notion of sin, as defined in monotheism, does not apply in Buddhism. Instead of sin, Buddhism focuses on the concept of karma, which is a natural law of cause and effect. Karma in Buddhism is not about the violation of divine commands, but about the consequences of our actions, driven by our intentions. Think of karma as a universal principle similar to gravity. Just as gravity pulls objects towards the earth, karma governs the results of our actions. Every action, whether good or bad, creates an effect based on the intention behind it. In Buddhism, there is no need for divine intervention or forgiveness for our actions. Our actions, good or bad, are inherently self-regulating. If we act with positive intentions, we will experience positive outcomes. If our actions are negative, we will face negative consequences. Unlike the monotheistic belief that sin must be forgiven by God in Buddhism, the responsibility for our actions lies squarely with ourselves. Understanding karma, the cause and effect of actions. The law of karma in Buddhism is deeply tied to the intention behind our actions. While monotheistic religions often focus on the action itself, Buddhism emphasizes that the moral quality of our intentions is what determines the karmic result. In Buddhism, a seemingly simple action can create a profound karmic effect depending on the motivation behind it. For example, if someone acts out of anger, such as shouting at a friend or family member, this action is not just about the words spoken or the hurt caused. The root cause is the negative emotion, anger, that prompted the behavior. This anger, when expressed, creates negative karma, leading to suffering not only for the person on the receiving end, but also for the person acting out of anger. The consequence of that action is felt emotionally, mentally, and sometimes physically. Later, the person who acted out of anger may feel regret or remorse, which is another form of suffering. On the other hand, when someone acts out of positive intentions, such as compassion, kindness, or wisdom, the karmic result is positive. The benefit may not be immediate in terms of tangible rewards, but it leads to a deeper sense of inner peace, happiness, and connection with others. Actions motivated by love, empathy, and understanding generate good karma, which ripples outward, creating positive outcomes. In essence, karma is about taking responsibility for our actions, reflecting on the motivation behind them, and understanding that every action, good or bad, creates an effect that can change our lives. Karma vs. sin, a profound difference. The key difference between sin and karma is profound and marks a fundamental shift in how moral responsibility is understood. In monotheistic religions, sin is something that requires forgiveness from an external deity. A person who sins must seek forgiveness through prayer, repentance, or penance, and only the divine being can decide whether the sinner will be absolved. In Buddhism, there is no divine being to forgive us for our wrongdoings. Karma is self-regulated, and there is no need to seek forgiveness from a higher power. Instead, we are responsible for our actions and their consequences. The Buddhist approach to morality focuses on personal accountability, self-reflection, and transformation. There is no external judge. We are our own judges, and the consequences of our actions are part of the natural order of things. This understanding of karma emphasizes personal responsibility. There is no external power to step in and absolve us of our actions. If we act with negative intentions, we must face the consequences. And if we act with positive intentions, we can expect positive results. Karma is a deeply personal journey that requires us to take responsibility for our actions and to transform our behavior. The role of intention in karma. A significant part of understanding karma is recognizing the role that intention plays in the creation of karmic consequences. In Buddhism, it is not just about the action itself, but why the action is performed. The Buddha taught that the moral quality of our actions is determined by the intentions behind them. This is a crucial distinction from other religious teachings, which often focus on the outward actions themselves. For example, consider a person who donates a large sum of money to a charity. If their intention is to receive praise or to gain tax benefits, their action, though seemingly good, is tainted by ego. The karma generated by such an action is not as positive as if the person had donated anonymously with no desire for recognition, purely out of compassion for others. The intention behind the action determines its karmic outcome. Similarly, if someone performs an act of kindness with the intention of benefiting others, without expecting anything in return, they generate positive karma. In Buddhism, actions are judged by the purity of the heart and the intention behind them, not just by their outward appearance. Personal responsibility in Buddhism. Buddhism places a strong emphasis on personal responsibility. Unlike the concept of sin, where a higher power may intervene to offer forgiveness, Buddhism teaches that you are the architect of your own life. The actions you take and the intentions behind those actions shape the life you experience. There is no one else to blame for your circumstances except yourself. This philosophy is both empowering and liberating. It means that you have the power to change your life by changing your actions and intentions. If you find yourself caught in negative patterns of behavior or thought, karma teaches that you can break free by becoming more self-aware and choosing to act differently. The key is not to seek external forgiveness, but to reflect deeply, learn from your mistakes, and commit to making positive changes. A personal story of karma in action. Let me share a story from my own life to illustrate how karma works. Several years ago, I worked in a job where I felt undervalued and frustrated. Instead of addressing my feelings, I directed my anger at my coworkers, which only created a toxic environment. I found myself feeling isolated and dissatisfied. It wasn't until I took a step back and realized that my anger and resentment were causing the problems that I began to shift my approach. By approaching my coworkers with patience and empathy, the atmosphere began to change, and I felt a renewed sense of connection and purpose. This experience demonstrated to me how the energy we put out into the world comes back to us. When we act with negativity, we create suffering, not just for others, but for ourselves. But when we act with compassion and understanding, we create harmony, peace, and positive outcomes for everyone involved. Karma offers us a framework for moral responsibility and personal transformation, where the emphasis is on intention and self-awareness. Unlike sin, which requires forgiveness from an external deity, karma places the power of change within our own hands. By understanding the cause and effect of our actions and the role of intention, we can create a life of peace, joy, and harmony, both for ourselves and for the world around us. Karma is not just about avoiding suffering, but about actively cultivating positive actions that lead to lasting happiness.